Hello and welcome to Money Matters. I am Folashade Ogurinde. Nigeria's gross domestic product (GDP) experienced a 2.51% year-on-year growth in real terms during the second quarter of 2023. This figure is below the 3.54% recorded in the second quarter of 2022, according to a report published by the National Bureau of Statistics. According to the report, the performance of the GDP in the second quarter of 2023 was driven mainly by the services sector, which recorded a growth of 4.42% and contributed 58.42% to the aggregate GDP. Now, joining us on the program is Oluseye Ajiwon, who is a Doctor of Philosophy, Department of Economics at the University of Lagos. Thank you very much for joining us. Now, while the GDP growth improved marginally between first and second quarter of 2023, we saw a decline compared to the second quarter of 2022. What's the reason for this?
When you look at the economic situations in the country, peaks are peaks. The first and second quarter 2022, first and second quarters 2023. You will agree with me that last year, between the first and second quarters, all the universities in Nigeria were down. And when one aspect is being affected, it has a way of affecting all other aspects of the economy. So one major factor that I knew, caused problem between the first and second quarter of 2022 was the close down of the academic section throughout throughout Nigeria, close down of the university throughout Nigeria. I know definitely there might be some other factors, but that's one I can remember there. But when you look at 2023, between the first and second quarter, you will agree with me that it was towards the end of the first quarter 2023 that we did the general election. And everybody was expecting, the election would be bloody, would be this, would be that. But at the end of the election, I will say a winner emerged, so also are the losers. Although the case is still in the courts, but the good thing about it was that if I am going to talk about the last election, it's one of the best elections this country has ever done in the history of this country. So, and the fact that the election, was so peaceful, it came and gone, and what happened before the election and what happened immediately after the election would definitely bring about a growth in the economy. Because if you remember well, before the election, the CBN made money to be so scarce, and thinking that they were affecting the political figures or whatever their reasons were. But the truth situation was that they were actually, affecting the economy of the country. And immediately after the presidential election, when the winner had emerged and the loser had emerged, the length. Likewise, there was a ruling in the law court. So definitely opening up the economy at that time definitely would bring about, increase in GDP, which is going to bring about a better economic performance in the second quarter of 2023 compared to the first quarter because of the Naira crunches in the economy during the first quarter of the 2023. It's not as if the economy is doing well. The economy is not doing well. But those are the factors that brings about marginal improvements or marginal increase between the first and second quarter of the 2023 and 2024.
Now, the non-oil sector continued its dominance in its contribution to GDP growth, contributing as much as 94.7% to GDP. What are the factors driving this growth?
I think you are making a mistake here. Oil sector being the major source of revenue for government does not mean that it's the oil sector that is dominating the economy. No, oil sector is just, source of revenue. Oil sector has never mean the major source of the GDP in this country. And like I told you, the economy has not been doing well lately. So, and when you see what is happening even in the oil sector, you understand why the oil sector is, doing badly compared to what it was doing before. We all know that oil bunkering and all those things is now the order of the day in the oil sector. And the oil companies are no more interested in investing in the oil sector in Nigeria. One of the reasons is that number one, the world is actually moving out of oil. The world is talking about green energy. So the world is moving out of oil. That's number one. Then number two, the PIB bill that Buhari signed into law, it was like 10 years overdue. When there is a law that's supposed to be put in place, it's like you are in an agreement and your agreement expired and there is new agreement that needs to come in place. And the new agreement took 10 years before it came into existence. What do you think will happen during that period? Definitely, nobody will be interested in investing in the oil sector because, how will you be investing in something that you don't know about the tomorrow, the future? So during those 10 years that Nigeria refused to bring about the petroleum industrial bill, all the oil companies have not been investing in the downstream sector. So that's one of the reasons. Then number two, the bill has been signed. Now that the bill has been signed, what's happening even in that industry? You realize that if you pass oil from, let's say, from the Niger Delta before it gets to Lagos, almost, say 40% of the oil has disappeared, or even 50% of the oil has disappeared along the way. So who will be investing in an environment where you will just be laboring, and some other people will be the one that will be reaping what you are laboring for? So that is the major problem. It became so bad last year that if care was not taken, you can see that for years now, we've not been able to meet the quota that OPEC has been given to Nigeria. The last meeting, OPEC had to, reduce Nigeria quota because it's like you are creating problems. If you actually will be pumping 2.2 million barrels per day, and you are pumping, so what's the probability that if we say it should stay, you meet that target? So they have to reduce what you have to be supplying to the market on a daily basis. So this is one of the problems that Nigeria is facing when it comes to the oil sector, and that is why when you look at his contribution to the GDP, it's so minimal.
Now, breaking these reports further, we see that road transport sector recorded the biggest contraction of 55% in the second quarter. What do you think are the major reasons for this slump?
When you look at what normally happens before election, the best way the politician can tell people that they are working is to embark on road constructions and things like that. And, immediately after the election, what do you think will happen after that? It's a way of telling the people that we are working. So before the election, there's always a lot of road construction, and anybody that wants their road or whatever, though it is at the appropriate time, to demand accountability from the politicians. Immediately after the election, they will just look at these Unilag Bariga roads. If you see the way they've been working on it before the election, after the election, I don't think they've done anything on that road up to today. So it's just the way we are in Nigeria. Once it is election period, you see a lot of construction, especially on the area of roads. Immediately after the election, that's the end until maybe when another election is coming.
Now, how soon should we expect a rebound in GDP growth?
When we look at what is happening in Nigeria currently now, I believe what we really need is the right policy in the right direction. And I think what the current president has been doing, taking appropriate policies that has been moving the country forward. But on the issue of those policies, there is gestation period, and we are looking at the between 12 and 18, that is between 1 year and 1.5 years for the gestation period of those policies to start yielding, good results. That does not mean that it will take the GDP that long before the GDP starts rebounding. The GDP can start rebounding in around 3 to 6 months after the policy. When we look at the policies already getting to, this is the end of the second month now. So by end of next month, which will be the third month, if we keep at it, I think by that time we can start seeing some changes in the way things are, in the way the GDP of the country is running. It is too early, and I assure you that in 3 to 6 months, if we keep at it in GDP, what I meant by keeping at it is if we actually, continue with the policies that the government is putting in place, if we don't petition it, that is, if we don't abort it, we'll continue with it, we will definitely, make this country to start moving forward. So hopefully in 3 to 6 months from when the policy started, we'll start seeing some positive results. But before it translates to real improvement in the general well-being of Nigerians, it will take minimum of 12 to 18 months to see the effect. But honestly, I can see some positive and negative signals ahead. Because why I'm saying positive and negative signals are this. One, I love the policy government has put in place. The era of Father Christmas, when we think has come to an end, we need to pay for all the wastages that has happened in the past. But when you look at, the effect on the people, the suffering and all those things, you will see that government has started backpedaling. For instance, the government was announcing that there won't be any increase in the price of oil. What that means is subsidies already coming back. And to go through that route again is like we are just moving in circles. But I am not a government, I am an economist. I can only tell you what economics theory says, the practicability of it. But in true sense of things, how to go about it, is another thing entirely. But I believe that government should just please, let's understand no more subsidy. What government is supposed to be talking about is, okay, how can we ameliorate, how can we reduce the effect of these increase in the prices of transportation and all those things on the people, not going through the routes of, okay, they will increase the price of, no. We shouldn't go to that route again. Never. They should just, leave the price, let the markets be determining the price. And, okay, so what can we do, to actually solve the problem of the people? Not that there won't be increase in the price of, no. Because the moment you start saying that there won't be any increase in the price of what you are saying is that they are bringing back subsidy. And we shouldn't go through that route again. We shouldn't go through that route again.
Well, indeed, Oluseyi Ajiwon, Doctor of Philosophy, Department of Economics at the University of Lagos. Thank you very much for your insight. We'll take a break now, but Money Matters returns shortly. To stay with us. Welcome back to the program. The 5 BRICS nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, have announced the admission of 6 new countries from next year as a club of large and populous emerging economies seeks to reshape the global order. Argentina, Ethiopia, Iran, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and the UAE are to become full members from 1st January 2024, the group announced at its summit in South Africa. Now, calls to enlarge BRICs had dominated the agenda at its three-day summit in Johannesburg and exposed divisions among the bloc over the pace and criteria for admitting new members. Now, to understand what an expansion of the BRICS group mean for global players, as well as Nigeria, Gospel Obele, who is the chief economist, Strictnomics Limited, joins us now. Thank you for your time. Now, the question begging to be answered here is that could an expanded BRICS really emerge as an alternate power bloc? What do you think?
Thank you so much. Very, very, very likely we've been seeing how the events in the world over the last couple of years have been sort of reinforming the need for a power shift or an alternative power sharing or some form of ownership. So take, for instance, thinking about how the COVID-19 evolved and the Russian-Ukraine war as well. You've seen that there is a strong growing desire for the eastern bloc of the Eurozone and some parts of Asia to sort of begin to own up to the grand scheme of things. We've seen how the Middle East have also come closely to the mainstream of engagement. So we've seen Qatar hosted a very wonderful World Cup yet last year, and how they're trying to also get themselves into the mainstream of things. So events in the past couple of years, cutting across geopolitics, sports, entertainment, lifestyle, have shown that consumers and nationals, government, investment, and all the likes are shifting and clustering, and sort of reinforming the need for a power shift or an alternative, like you mentioned. So I'm not surprised that there is sort of like there's a request, for an expanded version of the BRICS agenda, which technically will entail more sign-ups of new members. And that's likely going to happen, again, because of the many nuances that we're seeing in the world today. So I won't be surprised if the BRICS portfolio has been expanded and it's a new name is being launched to capture, the acronyms of the different countries and all that are now involved. What that would technically mean is that there's going to be a shift in many things: trade, investment, currency, and facilitation of global wealth control and all the likes as we go forward.
Now, BRICS has also agreed to begin lending in South African and Brazilian currencies. What significance does this hold?
Well, the conversation around the influence of the dollar is way, way bigger than just a BRICS argument. There's a concept called currency wars, meaning that we are increasingly in an era where nations are vying for the positioning of their currency, and which is why every time I have an opportunity to talk about the naira, I say that the naira, the value and strength of the naira is built on two grounds. Number one, the productivity of the local country, that's Nigeria in this context, and then on a more sufficient level, the quality of lobbying, institutional management, and drive for representation of that currency. So we'll see what Brazil, Mexico, and many other countries are trying to do with their own currencies to ensure that there is no third-party exchange, which is the dollar, when they're trying to facilitate trade with other emerging markets or even developing economies. So that argument has been at the forefront. And that argument is themed to a very large extent as what we term as currency wars. That means the rise and fall of currencies as we know it, because new currencies are emerging at the mainstream, or are being lobbied to emerge at the mainstream of global trade and investments and all that. So I'm not surprised that this is happening. If all goes well, as predictions are looking in context of new membership into the BRICS and review of its goal and aspirations, then you're going to have a global system where more countries will be aiming for direct exchange than having to do business with another country on a third-party currency basis. So, for instance, in Nigeria, I should be able to buy something in Nairobi or Mombasa, Kenya, and I can pay for that product in naira, but the individual back in Kenya will receive it as shillings. So the people are agitating for that direct exchange right there. China is heavily involved. Russia is very heavily involved on the convention, Brazil and Mexico as well. So I'm not surprised. And even the ASCFTA with the PAPSS scheme they're trying to roll out is also seeking to fizzle out third-party exchange in the grand scheme of things. So it's largely expected.
In response to this development, the United States on Thursday played down the admission of 6 new members to the BRICS bloc of developing nations, saying it would keep working with partners around the world. What do you make of that?
I mean, the thing about movement building, which is a critical part of what nations are trying to achieve with all of these agenda. I mean, very soon you'll still see the mint countries, which is Mexico, Indonesia, Nigeria, Turkey. Where we also take them as the next 11, you'll still see the mint countries also coming up to say that they want to also push the agenda. If once BRICS or if the BRICS become successful with what they're doing, you see more of the mint and the next 11 kind of countries also agitating for it, or even regions agitating for those differences. So what that will happen what that will lead to is formation of new alliances. People seeking to partner with other institutions, just to be able to get their voices heard or to grow the level of control or get closer, to the objective and to the mark they are aiming to achieve. So that's largely expected in the grand scheme of things. I would expect that it's part of the grand scheme of lobbying.
Now, why do you think BRICS ignored Nigeria by not inviting the country to be a part of the group?
To be very honest with you, it's very obvious. Data by the Global Investments and Attractiveness Institutions, I think I could put it up somewhere, shows that Egypt, Morocco, Rwanda, Ethiopia are more attractive investment destinations than Nigeria. So it's just very simple. The data is there. Even on the rankings of central bank governors or the monetary policy effectiveness, realize that Morocco, Egypt, and all of those mostly North African countries are doing way better than us, all right, in Nigeria. So it's largely expected that at the level of BRICS engagement, there has to be a level of intentionality, and that also informs the cluster of countries, that are being invited to the table. You also need to understand that looking at the similarities across the BRICS nations, it's I mean, they would not want to bring in a member that would likely drop the ball when it comes to quality of what they have to offer. If you look at the Saudi, for instance, look at Argentina, look at Brazil, those countries are very closer, to more efficiency as emerging markets than Nigeria, and investments and all that. So, I mean, I think it's quite obvious. Nigeria still plays at the mint level. So, again, if you have a country at the mint level, you don't expect that country to move significantly to the BRICS level if that country has not made some strategic development or industrialization or investment jump over time.
Now, does BRICS matter to Nigeria really?
I have a big problem with Nigeria needing to belong to BRICS. If you're doing your work well, when I mean your work well, you have your productivity base on lock, you have a strong currency, a vibrant economy. Yes, your economy can be exposed to many other things. You have something to offer the world strategically as economic value. We're not talking about Afrobeats now. Economic value, strategic economic value has to offer the world. And at a level of that offering, you are also very much, you also interact with the world in terms of pushing out your national reputation. You are respected for some certain things, or you are feared for some certain things, or you have a level of economic weight, to get things done. At that level, it will make sense to say that you are lobbying to be part of the BRICS, which again, sort of validates the argument for countries who want to play in the BRICS space. But in the Nigerian argument, I'm sorry to say, but we are not actually doing very well, even close to well or good, across all the metrics I just mentioned now. So I think it's for us to prove our worth and do more for ourselves. The invitation to be a part of BRICS, or the invitation to even be classified as an emerging market, is right in front of us if we do the needful, and if stakeholders across the world can identify that we're pulling those weights. I mean, the reason why China is right at the forefront is they're investing heavily into economies. Their local economy is strong and vibrant. They're pulling lots of manufacturing base and industry into their economy. They have the population strength, lots of things that China has that Nigeria doesn't have. All right. So how do you want to compete with China at the BRICS stage? So and right now, in many cases, we're still looked at as a frontier market than an emerging market. So those who are putting up arguments that Nigeria should be part of the BRICS, maybe they're talking from a potential angle, And again, the question has to be, what can we offer the BRICS rather than what can the BRICS offer us?
Now, the Vice President, Kashim Shettima, says Nigeria is committed to collaborating with China and other African countries.
I agree with you. What I would think of on top of mind as per incentive for the attendance and all of that is to have, find the opportunity to sort of build the strategic relationship Nigeria needs to garner investment, garner focus, garner attention, because to be honest, those partnerships are very critical to Nigeria's growth and development. However, they should not be at a cost for us in the mid to long term. It should be at a win-win. That's where I'm arguing from. So, so it makes sense that you have the vice president in attendance because you need that visibility as well to begin to establish your interest, to establish your purpose, and, hopefully what you can even bring to the table, right? So it makes sense. It's a valid move, However, I would argue from a win-win perspective as to what, how, and why we need to play in the BRICS and what we have to offer them in the mid to long term, even in the short term as well.
So what lessons can be gleaned by the federal government on its exemption by the BRICS group?
Well, to be very honest, I would expect the federal government to just go back and do its homework. Value always attracts, right? Once you fix your home base, your economy is vibrant, you're dealing significantly. Look at all the countries at the BRICS level: Russia, India, China. They all have something they're offering the world. Even South Africa. South Africa is the how will I put it? It's sort of like the entrance market for many institutions globally into Africa. Not Nigeria, actually. People think it's Nigeria. It's actually South Africa to a very large extent. So if you think about it, we need to actually get our home base. So I don't think it's more of what should Nigeria do in context to BRICS, but more in context to ourselves.
Well, Gospel Obele, Chief Economist, Strictnomics Limited, thank you very much for your time and contribution. That's it on the program. Do join us again next time. Bye for now.